Hello and welcome to the Catholic Passage Podcast. My name is Neil Flattery and I'm today's host. This podcast aims to pursue the truth, an authentic Catholic life, a deep integration of faith and reason, and a joyful community of families raising the next generation of the Catholic faithful. The guest for today's episode is Father Ross Caniglia, who is a Catholic priest in the Diocese of Sioux City and currently is serving as a parochial vicar at my local parish of Holy Trinity in Webster County, Iowa. I'm really excited to share our discussion where we discuss Father Ross's faith journey and vocation story, and of course, so much more. We hope you enjoy our conversation and that it might bless you in some way. Father Ross, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're here today in the St. Edmund podcast recording studio.
We are. We're using a phone.
Using none of their equipment.
It took a while. We got it up and running.
But everything's good now. So I just wanted you to join us today in the rest of the Catholic Passage community to kind of talk a little bit about your backstory. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've probably discussed in detail your story before on other platforms and with other
everyone
people.
Wants to know it.
You're famous.
It's an amazing story.
You're famous, yeah. But yeah, tell me a little bit about what your upbringing was like. What was your family life, your siblings, and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I grew up in Council Bluffs, so in the Omaha area. And I have three siblings. So I have a twin brother. We're actually identical twins. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I have a picture on my phone. I'll show that to you later. But yeah, no, I have an identical twin brother. So we're the same age. And,
wow.
So we're identical twins. And so there's that. And then I have two older sisters. One's like 5 years older and one's 3 years older than us. So they kind of live all throughout the Midwest. One's in Iowa City, one's in Minneapolis, and my brother's in Omaha. So yeah, grew up three siblings, parents. They're both retired now, but my dad was a lawyer and my mom was a nurse.
Okay.
And yeah, growing up, we went to St. Patrick's Catholic Church in Council Bluffs, and went to St. Albert for high school.
Yeah.
And I know we talked before because Neil, you played baseball and basketball and stuff in high school and amongst other sports. But did you guys play St. Albert maybe one of those years for baseball or something?
My brother did. There were some famous battles they had in 2009 in the state tournament in basketball and baseball. But they're always good in sports. And I think I texted you a couple weeks ago just randomly out of nowhere because I found out the St. Albert's men or the boys have a different nickname than the girls.
It's like Falcons and Saints. Yeah, so the boys are the Falcons, the girls are the Saints.
Which I kind of like. Yeah.
So back in the day, so like if you look at the school, there's like two wings of the school. And so it used to be like, they used to kind of keep them separate where the boys were taught by the priests and the girls were taught by the nuns. So it's kind of unique. So I think that kind of came out of that whole thing with the separation that they actually developed two different mascots. But yeah. It was very similar to St. Ed's. I would say I'm the chaplain now at St. Ed's. So it's like even like the colors, like we were green and gold, like you guys are kind of green and yellow-ish.
We kind of
alternate.
It's kind of green and white, but over the last few years, we've been kind of putting in this yellow a little bit too. But some of the traditionalists like me, I don't know if we like the yellow as much getting in there. But it's
I'm used to those colors, and so that's the interesting thing. But like, I feel like the culture, like St. Albert, is very kind of similar. I would say
in a bigger town.
I
guess Council Bluffs is a lot bigger.
Yeah, but Council Bluffs itself is 60,000, so it is bigger. But just like the feel, like very like kind of same size. Like I grew up, like we had like 56 in my graduating class, so kind of a similar type of size. Got just that environment, went through first through 12th grade, so just got to know everyone, and just had that education, that Catholic education growing up, which is something that at the time, like when you're going through it, you're like, okay, some things kind of annoy you, like uniforms and just like kind of the rules that Catholic school provides. But I think for me, it was kind of a good foundation in terms of learning kind of the basics about the faith, but also just like having the faith day in and day out as something that was valued, and something that just kind of gave me that structure, that internal structure and disposition towards the faith. So like even growing up as a family, okay, yeah, we went to mass every Sunday. That was like something that was like like my dad made sure, and my mom, but especially my dad, kind of was that spiritual leader of the family, just like making sure that we were at mass no matter what. Like if we were on vacation, if we had sports and stuff, like that was a priority. Like we were there. And so again, seemingly a small thing, like for me growing up, like it seemed like kind of a small thing, but just like how much like importance I now realize that was.
It was never a question.
Never a question. Like this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like there's no other option. And so like, but outside of that, like in terms of my like family life, like our parents would encourage us to like pray individually before we went to bed and stuff. So we like prayed before meals, but we weren't really like a particularly like over the top, like super pious family by any means. Like we did a lot of normal things. Like growing up, all of us played sports of some sort. My siblings, like all of them, were much more athletic than I am. Like I did like basketball and baseball growing up, and volleyball actually, like from time to time more recreationally. But yeah, in high school actually I did bowling. So we like within a few years, like when I was in high school, they started a bowling team. So our bowling coach used to say, Mr. Messling used to say that it was one of the only sports where you could like eat nachos and play it. So yeah, I enjoyed it. So that's what I did in high school. But my twin brother did other stuff, and siblings did a whole bunch of. But what I was like really involved in, like extracurricular wise, was like music and.
Well, you were the lead
theater.
in the musical.
Yeah. So a couple I think leads on like one musical and like in plays and stuff. So I really enjoyed that. And then I did like tons of like small group contests and solos, and took piano growing up, from the time I was in third grade, like through college. So did a lot of that kind of stuff. And yeah, and I still like keep up. I still love music today. So for me, like growing up, like a lot of that was just like any other person, just like kind of busy with a whole bunch of stuff. And it wasn't really until college, I think, that I kind of like had kind of this, even though I don't feel like I had too much drifted away from the church, like even when I was in college, I think for the most part, like I regularly practiced in terms of like going to mass, but like was I regularly praying? No. It's just like God wasn't really on the forefront. It was something that I knew I had to do, but It wasn't like really an integrated part of like my life. But that was until like when I was sophomore, junior year, I made some friends with folks that weren't Catholic, and they had like for the first time was like encountering all these questions about our faith, and really stuff that I had taken for granted, like, why do you guys ask for the saints' intercession, or like quote unquote pray to saints, and like what's the big deal about Mary, and like why, like, the questions kept coming, like, does it seem like you have to like earn God's love or earn his grace, all those kind of typical questions that Catholics might get when we're encountered by someone that just doesn't quite understand the faith. And so when I was presented with these questions, I was like, these are really good questions, and I didn't really have the answers. And so it kind of led me into this, first of all, this like intellectual like discovery on my own, like researching stuff. I met with like a priest a few times at Creighton, Father Rock O'Connor, and we would just have these really good conversations. And in the midst of all of this intellectual curiosity and like diving into the faith, I was also having like situations like where, just through college experiences and just kind of some mental health and physical health stuff, it got me just like questioning, like, what is the point? Like, what's really the purpose of my life? What did God make me for? Like, is all this pointless, or is there some deeper meaning? And so that got me for the first time really praying and really communicating with God in the midst of all of this like intellectual curiosity. And so, yeah, for me, kind of a simple upbringing led to kind of a complex, like kind of like self-motivated, like trying to figure things out by the time I got to that point.
It seems like this story is pretty common, where it's like, it seems like your upbringing seems somewhat similar to mine. We went to similar schools.
Sure.
Did a lot of different activities growing up. Our parents took us to mass every Sunday. And I wonder if like, it's like our parental upbringing, maybe you mentioned it maybe wasn't overly pious, but I think sometimes it's just like, from our parents' generation, it's just something, they weren't always that open about stuff that was going on internally with their faith and stuff like that. So it wasn't much till like I was older that maybe I had these conversations with my dad, but it was more like go to mass every Sunday and those type of things. But like once you actually take that step to go to college, then you have to maybe make the faith your own and make a decision on, do we want to continue doing this and take some deeper steps and more steps, or do we want to go the other direction?
Yeah, for me, I think part of that kind of individuating, or like kind of that, first of all, my twin, he went to a different college. So he went to Drake and I went to Creighton in Omaha. So we're separated for the first time. So that was a big part. Like, I'm on my own, even though I'm not that far away from my parents, I really didn't spend much of any time at home during the school year. So I was really kind of confronted with that opportunity to discover who I was. And part of that can be like a painful and also but also like freeing process, right? But it's also like trial and error, And so for me, that was an important part, and like really just kind of that allowed the space, I think, to have some of these this curiosity and like this questioning that was coming up, and to really kind of to say like, okay, I can't have this all figured out. Like, it's not, I need someone else like for help. I need God. I need him in my life. I need friends, but at the heart of even any relationship, I need to stay connected and to discover who God is. And so that was a big part of that kind of exploration. So yeah, like you said, like growing up, you're given like those foundations or those seeds.
And those are important.
And those are really important.
Yeah.
And like, cause you talk to anyone that doesn't have those, and like, you kind of feel sorry because it's such a disadvantage. I feel like just not even having the basics, So yeah, those were super important, but like having that growing up and just, you think differently and all that stuff because you're in college, and so you're able to think more deeply and stuff. It just those questions come up, and it's just a good time to discover.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think, and you could probably articulate this a lot better than I can, but it's almost like when you have that relationship with God, then it provides meaning to all the other relationships you have in your life, with your friends, with maybe you're a significant other, with your parents, with your siblings, and all that sort of stuff. It's almost like it provides meaning. It's like, this relationship is important because my relationship with God is important in a certain way.
Something that really struck me when I was in college, in the midst of this intellectual kind of curiosity, we were reading Confessions, St. Augustine's Confessions, in one of our classes. And when I went to Creighton, I was like, I don't even want to, it was philosophy. And I was like, I don't want to take that. I don't even know what that is, And so, but it really challenged me through reading that. Something that Augustine said that stuck out to me with regards to what you're talking about is that he said, like, for him, it was like this idea of not loving the creature as a creature, but loving God in the creature, to be able to see God in all things. That's a very Jesuit thing, but to be able to see that the person that you encounter at a deeper level is like the person who should be embodying, hopefully, Christ. The fact that whether or not they want to acknowledge it, that Jesus is within them, right? And so for me, that did become a focus, like in college, like especially after kind of exploring that, was like, yeah, do I actually treat others as if Jesus was in front of me, right? Like when I was later on, after college, I ended up working, and we'll probably get to this, or we can get to it now. I worked as a meteorologist, so that's what I was studying in college.
Well, you're still a meteorologist.
Yeah, exactly.
These thunderstorms coming to town.
Exactly. I still do like Facebook Live. Yeah, you can't take it out of me. But yeah, I did. So like I interned like from the time I was in high school. I was like pretty set. This is what I want to do, right? I want to be a meteorologist, and so I did that for a few years post college in Sioux City. But one of the things like I really struggled with throughout those few years, and most people might not like think that this would be the case, but I really struggled with like anxiety, especially anxiety in a lot of things in life, but especially when it came to like being on TV, like public speaking and stuff. Even though I did it all the time, I still like dealt with that like routinely. And so when I would go on, something that really helped is I would say, okay, like I use this logic. I'm like, okay, so if I'm really delivering this weather, I'm going to deliver this weather to the people at home, whoever these people are, like out there in the ether, like I just have this camera in front of my face, but I'm going to like pretend, as opposed to me delivering it to like these simple people, I'm going to deliver this like forecast to Jesus, because I know Jesus is within them. And so I would like, the more that when I would go on air and treat it as if it were like a prayer, as if I was like telling Jesus about the weather, that really helped me to focus and to really just be calm and just be like, okay, I'm just going to talk right to him. Right. And so like, yeah, it was kind of cool. I found ways to kind of integrate like my relationship with him, even when I was working and doing that. And it really helped.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Well, I always, because I've heard people say before that sometimes being on TV isn't maybe as hard as talking in front of people because you're not actually looking at, but there's probably people in the set and stuff like that you're talking to too.
Right. That's true.
But it's maybe just a different challenge. Maybe not one's harder and one's not.
Yeah, it's just different. At times it takes time to get used to either, I think. But so that was kind of an interesting point in my life. Yeah.
Okay. So now you're a meteorologist. You're in Sioux City, right? And now at this point in time, were you still considering becoming a priest, or was there maybe someone who came into your life and maybe made a comment that you maybe would make a good priest, or how did you take that next step to, start to follow your calling?
So I think what actually happened, so when I was in college, through that discovering and caring more about the faith, that's when that question initially started to come up, maybe I'm called to be a priest. But it was kind of something that I was like, well, I'm kind of this is all I've been working towards this career in meteorology and stuff like that for years. And so I had that on the forefront. So I went to work in Sioux City knowing that priesthood perhaps could eventually be a possibility. And when I was probably I'd say about a year and a half, so I was there for 3 years, halfway through my contract, I was actually up so it's a place called Trinity Heights in Sioux City. It's a beautiful, outdoor place that has outdoor stations and outdoor, just kind of a prayerful place with kind of a garden, whatever. So I was up there, and one day I just had a question. I just needed some advice from I was pursuing a spiritual director. And so I talked to someone, Mary Stevens, up there, who was kind of helping volunteer and doing things at Trinity Heights. And I said, have you, I think I called her on the phone, or I don't know. I talked to her and I was like, do you have any recommendations? And she said, well, let me find out. I'll call the diocese and see what they recommend. So she called back a few days later and she said, this is, who you might check out with. And at the end of the conversation, she said, and have you ever thought about being a priest? And I said, well, a little bit, some. And she said, well, if it's still in your heart, if it's been on your heart for some time, then maybe I would just advise just reaching out, maybe the vocational director or someone, and your priest or whatever, and just to kind of ask some questions and see. So that's what I did. I just felt at that time it was really God speaking through her and saying okay, this has been on your mind, so now do something, you know. And so that's kind of how that got started. I started to talk to Father Brad Pelzel, who was the vocations director at the time in Sioux City, and we would meet monthly, and it was just kind of a gradual kind of discovery, okay, I'm going to at least try this. I'm going to try seminary out and see if this is the right fit. And then from there, it just continued to, it seemed that she was fitting, right? It seemed that this is, first of all, something that I was interested in, but also something that God was calling me more deeply to pursue.
Because that's a huge commitment for someone, especially someone in your situation who has this not only established career, but you're someone who's probably recognized around Sioux City on television. And just to make that decision to, I'll say I'm just going to completely do a U-turn after all those years of education to be a meteorologist. And I know it's pretty extensive too. What was that like to leave your employer and
that was tough. I think I still remember the last night that I was at KTIV in Sioux City, and I just kind of looked around the studio and I was like, okay, well, this is it. It's just, again, ever since I was in fifth grade, I incessantly watched the Weather Channel and the local news. And even when I was probably 7th, 8th grade, when we got the internet, I started to I would follow weather, look at weather models. So it seems like I've been doing this for 20 or 25 years,
Right.
But it's at the time it kind of was surreal. Okay, I'm switching, but part of the confirmation there was the motives. I just kind of looked at, I don't know, I just felt that there was something, even just working for those few years, I felt that there was something missing, something deeper. Again, it just went back to that purpose, why God had created me, what was the deeper purpose of my life. And I just felt it was not only to help people, which is what hopefully you do in any career, but especially when you're warning people severe weather and on TV during these crazy situations, but really to go deeper and to like really be there for people and to help like heal souls and to help save those. And so that for me was like a bigger, that went deeper than the other, you know.
Yeah.
Both are good, but I just felt like that there was kind of a deeper calling in that regard.
Right. Well, that's interesting. Well, we're glad to have you in Sioux City too.
Yeah, and that was part of the discernment too. Should I like?
Right. Did you think about going back to Des Moines?
Yeah, I did. Like that was part of the discernment process. But I just had made a lot of connections in Sioux City and just got to know, like, you know, doing news reporting as well at the station, like getting to know the area, like geographically, and meeting people, and it became like home.
Yeah.
And so that kind of is where God pulled me. It was in that direction.
And sometimes I wonder too, you know, when you're in Council Bluffs, it's almost similar to Fort Dodge in the sense too, where Sioux City is a long ways away from Fort Dodge, in the same way as Des Moines is kind of a long ways away from Council Bluffs too. So you maybe we don't have like the super, you know, tight connection to like the actual diocesan structure than maybe you would if you lived in Sioux City.
Yeah, and they're smaller places, right? But what I've come to discover is like even growing like up in the Omaha Metro and being surrounded by like a lot of things going on, what I've realized though is like what makes the place is, I mean, the church community, but also just, getting to know the people. It's like no matter where you go, there are good people. And that's been my experience, you know, so far in both parishes, right?
Yeah.
I was in Boone before this for a few years, and no matter where you go, there are good people there to support you and to love you and great people to serve. So it's
Yeah, and I know, so, you know, typically how it works, it seems like with new priests, is that you're really only in a specific community for maybe 2-3 years.
Especially when you're kind of starting when you're a younger priest.
Yeah, and it seems like typically now it's like the bishop will assign a younger priest to serve in a school specifically so you can work as a chaplain. What has that been like for you to have to, you know, reorient yourself to a new parish and community, you know, after just a couple of years?
So when I was in Boone, so that was the first assignment, I had to teach for a few years, and I taught middle school, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. I mean, at different times, but.
Oh, you actually taught classes?
Yeah, I taught class, and that was, it was fun. Like, I really love the students, but teaching it's tough, especially those ages. Like, really to like shut up and like sit down, you know. It's like you're trying to like manage all this and trying to like know the content and stuff. So I think that was definitely like teaching at those I don't know how like elementary school teachers do it every day. It's just a lot. Kids are a lot of work. But it was really awesome though, because it really kind of being established and like being there at Sacred Heart and Boone just really made me like fall in love with like the school environment and just like everything that happens at school. So by the time I got to Fort Dodge, I was familiar with those younger ages. And now it's being like connecting and like getting the feel for what high school students and middle school are like. And it's very different. Those two different groups are it takes some time to get acquainted to the older kids. But now that I've kind of done that, I feel like and just gotten comfortable with that. I just really, that's one of my favorite things so far as a priest is being present in the school, being there for students, especially at a really interesting time in their life where they're just kind of, again, it's a time of sometimes questioning or a time of really just kind of exploring things and just being able to just to hang out with kids and just to meet them where they're at. I think it's been a really cool experience and just encounter them in their situations, their everyday experience.
And I think I remember Father Shane mentioning this before, and I think he was speaking in terms of like maybe vocations and how to inspire kids to look into having or discern a vocation. It's almost like you have to reach kids when they're in 5th and 6th grade too, because it's like by the time you try to reach them when they're in high school and if they don't have that established faith and that like a relationship with God before that time, it's harder to get to that point.
Yeah, I can definitely
high school.
Yeah, and I think at that age, like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, kids are so moldable. I mean, you probably see that with coaching and stuff. It's like, kids are just really willing to listen and to be able to be receptive. It's in high school, sometimes people will put up like kind of walls a little bit as a protection. But I think in those earlier ages, it's kind of easier to do that. So I think when you can plant those seeds early, by the time they reach those older ages, they're kind of already a little bit more receptive or familiar. But I would say that this is, I think from my perspective, the biggest one of the most important things. Now, not that I've seen like the fruits of being here at St. Ed yet in terms of if we've had any vocations, but I think the biggest thing that a priest can do is probably, like you said, like build bridges and just to be like, try to be like a normal person.
Yeah.
I think there's some intimidation when a priest like comes in and says like, are you like, are you already praying like 5 holy hours, or are you like, how holy are you, or like, do you go to, so as opposed to like kind of coming at from that angle, I guess my philosophy, and I think this is big from like my seminary formation, has been to start from the ground up, to work with building those bridges and to say, okay, the reason oftentimes why I think young men or boys don't think they could become or want to become a priest is because they view it as something that's like a lonely life, and a life where it's like all some of the priests that they see are just like strange people, right? And just like, so the lack of like normalcy, or like seeing as this is something that a real person could do, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the more that you view it, try to display like, no, this is like this is something that anyone could do. It's what God is calling you to do. But you can, not only can you do it, but it can actually be something that can be enjoyable, right? Rather than this kind of ostracizing or lonely life.
Yeah. So would you say that's probably one of your favorite part of being a priest is being in the schools, reaching young people?
Mm-hmm.
Is that probably
so far?
Yeah, so far.
That's been my experience so far. Is like, I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's really helped me to face some of my, even kind of like think back to those times when I was that age, right? And to even almost work through some of those things that I've kind of, even some of those like those wounded areas, like when I was younger, and to say like, okay, like, so it's interesting, like with like my interactions with those that age, it's kind of helped me to kind of like heal from some of those things that I've kind of like dealt with and
maybe been holding on to for years and years and years.
Exactly.
And you can view it in a different light.
And to see it from a different, it's funny because when you're in high school or when you're even in elementary, you view everything as being such a huge deal, right? Like if we don't win this, game tonight, or if we don't win the state championship, then like my life is over, kind of thing. Yeah. But when you take that 30,000 foot look, and now as an adult and looking in, it's like, oh my gosh, right? It's like, that's not a huge deal.
Yeah.
Right. And just to look at the ways that God has worked in my life, to see the journey that I've been on, and to see that He was there every step, is just like a really cool experience. And so for me, that's just like giving me some of that.
It's a way for you to almost reminisce on your past and heal some of those old wounds by having a different perspective on it. Yeah,
exactly.
Interesting. What would you say your biggest challenge is being a priest?
That's a great question. I think everywhere you go, I think there's going to be any vocation, right? Even married life, there's always challenges. So it's kind of funny for me to hear people be like, "Oh, Father, I didn't think I could be a priest. Like, it's just too much. I couldn't do it, so I had to get married." And then I think my perspective is like the same. It's like kind of like, I don't think I could be married, because for me it seems like a lot of work. It's like, for me it's almost like priesthood's easier because, gosh, you have like, and I know you have some young kids. It's like running left and right and doing all that stuff and staying up half the night because they won't go to sleep, or crying or whatever, and on top of your job, and you're trying to remain like connected to your spouse, like in the midst of all that. Like, that's a lot of balancing work, that's probably at times gets off balance, just like it does for me in the priesthood. So I think, so for me, the challenge in priesthood so far is at times just like being cognizant, okay, like setting good boundaries in terms of like, okay, I don't have the time for this, or this is something that I would like to do but can't do at this point, So it's fun because like you have all these opportunities, like, wow, like it's almost like
you can make it
the landscape is endless, right? You can make it what you want in some regards, but you're like, sometimes you just have to know when enough is enough, or what you can do and can't do. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a big thing that I've experienced, especially like in Fort Dodge. It's such a big parish. There's so much going on. And so I want to do a lot of these things, but sometimes you just have to love yourself enough to say yes or no.
And I feel like you've done a good job with that since you've been here, because, you have and also like a gift of music.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't really touched on that much yet. You've composed your own music, mm-hmm. written your own music, and now I think maybe you got into our parish and you're like, we need a choir. We have all these people. We got some good voices. We need to have a more established choir. And you maybe took some time to discern that, and then you've put one in place now. But can you tell me a little bit about like what, how you've, just what your relationship with music is and how you've used that to like in your ministry?
Sure, yeah. For me, like music is not really work. I think music for me is like an outlet, or it's like a nice, I don't know, it's definitely a hobby. It's something that kind of gives me life. And so when I was in seminary, I don't know how many years ago, probably 7 years ago, somewhere on there, I started, like, I was just playing piano one day. I used to like play for our Spanish choir, and like this melody just kind of like came up from some of the music I was, doing, a different melody. And then I started just like writing. So I ended up writing a mass setting. I wrote like all of these notes out in like a couple of days probably. And then I just like worked on it for a while, like several years. And yeah, it's the first composing I'd ever done. But it was the whole experience was fun and sometimes frustrating because you think you got it. Like, it's like writing like an essay or like a paper, and you're like, okay, it's good. Then someone proofreads it, or you look at it a second time the next day and you're like, this isn't any good. Right. And so it's kind of a fun process, like the revising and just like to get it exactly with the way you want it. And then when it's done, of course, and when it gets published, then you want to go back and change stuff, right? Because it's like, but anyway, sometimes you just got to let it go.
Well, I've heard people say that before when writing a book, where it's like, It's never done. It's just you stopped.
Yeah, it's the way it was when you got done. But it's just like participating in that creativity, and even from a spiritual standpoint, just like God, God has created us, right? He creates everything out of nothing. And so when we can create and kind of like use our creativity to make something new, or just to like come up with something, it's really like this beautiful way to like participate in the work of God, because we're participating in creation as He creates. So for me, that's been a big part of just like not only like spirituality, but also just kind of just like letting go and just like seeing the beauty of God in all of these different things, and the way that He works and moves it in music. Just to listen to music and to create it and to hear what you've done is really cool. And then it's another layer of like performing it and all that kind of stuff, is just to kind of see it kind of come alive. So yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I know. I think I've heard Tolkien. He'd have a term for that, because he referred to like his own process of writing The Lord of the Rings as like a sub creation. Like basically God is the creator, and He's just using the gifts and creating within the framework that God set up for us as a sub creation.
For sure.
So almost like what we're doing what you're doing when you're writing music. It's kind of interesting.
Exactly. And and you rely on the Holy Spirit to kind of like inspire whatever, just trusting in that, because I think ultimately it's His work, because the type of music I do is church music. So I think it's just, if it's for the church, if that's the intention, is to kind of put that out there for the church to use, and you want to make sure that it's integrated into your prayer and into the way you're living and stuff. So
Interesting. So what other hobbies do you have? What are some like less impressive hobbies that you have, and what do you like to do?
Good question. Well, again, like I said, and it's been a while since I did this, but bowling. Bowling. So that's fun, and again, it's just a kind of a fun thing to do.
You have a lot of nice, just like good hobbies, like you like weather.
Weather. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
following the weather. Yeah. So it's anytime there's a snowstorm or severe weather, I'm
on Facebook Live.
Watching.
Exactly.
So that's a lot of fun, and it's fun to get the interaction too. That's different than when you're on TV, you get some interaction, but usually it's like people just saying ridiculous. It's like spam almost,
Yeah.
But when you're actually living in a place and like getting feedback, that's kind of fun, or just to talk about it. I enjoy talking about it. There's that. Also, I love volleyball. Again, something that I played since I was growing up. Never really did any like club stuff or anything. I wish I did, but again, there's only so much time. But I just enjoy doing that. So like sometimes I'll stop in like open gyms or whatever and just play around, or if they have stuff at the school when there's volleyball stuff, I'll do that. Basketball, right? I enjoy it. I'm not that great at it, but I'm
pretty good around the hoop.
It depends on the day, but just like playing with some of the young adults here in the parish, younger adults.
I still need to petition the bishop to see if he can let us play on Sundays.
Yeah, exactly. No, so it's just really fun to do that. And I don't know, various things like tennis. I actually play tennis a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So whatever. So several sports, kind of mediocre at all of them, and then music and playing piano and composing again. That's kind of a hobby. Even less impressive than that. I'm trying to think of like something. I don't even know. Because I'm just so impressive. No, I just try to think.
I don't do anything that's not impressive.
Yeah, exactly. I have high standards. I don't know. I just like hanging out with people and socializing. I mean, I guess that's pretty normal. Whatever.
Well, that's awesome.
People do that.
Well, Father, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us and the rest of our listeners. So I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Catholic Passage Podcast, and we hope that it blesses you. Please check our show notes for a reflection takeaway, as well as more info on Catholic Passage. We aim to support parents and educators as they pass on the Catholic faith and way of life to their children and students. To find out more about what we offer or how you might collaborate with us, visit CatholicPassage.com. Most importantly, you can support us through your prayers. We'll be praying for you. Please pray for us.